Welcome, guys, to ILWPOD. I'm your host, as always, Justin Wright. Today we are welcomed with Brandon Barretta. How we doing, man?
Doing good, dude. Doing good. Living the dream.
Excited. Um, Before we get into any like actual questioning or questions, would you like to shout any social medias, merchandise, anything like that, and get the
Yeah,
plugs out the way?
dude, of course. Yeah. So Instagram, Facebook, it's Brandon Barretta 98. And Barretta is Barretta. No, I'm not stealing Jeff Jarrett's gimmick. And then I just got on Twitter. Just got on Twitter probably within the last month and a half. So it's B underscore Barretta, spelled the same way, 98. Um, that was my first time kind of jumping into the X or Twitter space, whatever people call it now, since like high school. So
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you have a pro wrestling T store?
I do, I do. I'm getting ready to throw some stuff on there, uh, like with more of the strictly business, stuff that I'm doing. But yeah, if you just search Brandon Brett on ProWrestlingTees.com, all my current stuff is still on there, but there will be some new additions to that here in the near future.
Sounds good. I always start with just a base question, something we kind of talked about a little bit off camera, but as wrestlers or wrestling fans, we all have a story for when we fell in love with wrestling. When was the first time you saw it and it captivated you?
Dude, so the first time I ever saw anything regarding professional wrestling, I was in fifth grade. I had actually just moved back to the school that I went to like kindergarten, first through third for. And, my childhood best friend, my buddy Blake, uh, he had just got back from breaking his leg because he used to race dirt bikes. And he's sitting on the floor and he's got his cast, on his leg, and he's sitting out straight, and he's got a SmackDown magazine, and it's got John Cena on the front, and he's still doing Doctor of Thugonomics at the time, and he's just plastered on this thing, and I'm like, dude, who is that? I'm just a little kid. I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, this is John Cena. He goes, you don't watch WWE? I'm like, what is that? And he's like, dude, you got to watch it. You got to look at it. It starts showing me the whole deal. That night I went home and was like, Mom, I want to watch wrestling. And she just figured out when it was on, and I watched, I think, the next Monday Night Raw and was hooked since. Now that's like the first introduction like to wrestling, but the first like memory I have where I was like hooked was after like a little bit of being so focused on wrestling, she would go to we used to have a Slackers in my hometown, and she would buy used WWE pay per view DVDs for like dirt cheap from them, right? And she
Okay.
bought me the one where Randy and his dad, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., put Undertaker in the casket, axed a
Lit
hole
on
into it,
fire.
lit it on fire. And as a kid, I'm like, I'm watching them murder this guy. Like, what? How is this allowed? How is this legal? And I was so drawn in by it. And that's like the first angle, that really had me, that I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. This is wild. Like, how am I watching this? But I would say those two instances would be the where really that got me hooked into what we do now.
Do you remember like your first like live experience?
Yeah, so it was actually Judgment Day 2007. They were in St. Louis, Missouri for it. We were so I was raised. I would just always say we were never like well off. Raised by a single mom, and she was always just busting her ass to, provide for me. But she made sure, she was like, WWE's in town. I'm taking you. And I I remember I was sitting so high up that she actually brought me binoculars, and I watched the show through binoculars. And the one takeaway I remember from that show is how Ric Flair, just his skin was like leather. Like he looked like a worn leather couch. And I was like, that was the one thing that I was like, wow, like these guys look even crazier in person. Like it's,
That's great. Were you like growing up, were you a sports kid? Did you participate in
yeah.
extracurriculars?
Oh yeah. So, obviously being a wrestling fan, the first thing I wanted to try was wrestling because I was going in thinking, oh, I'm going to go learn how to wrestle in school and it's going to be pro wrestling. So my
Yeah.
mom signs me up for a summer camp for wrestling in my hometown. And dude, I was always the as a kid I had to shop in the husky section at Kohl's. Like I was always the thick little kid. And we go and I do this like week long camp, and we get towards the end of it, and they're like, all right, we're actually going to have you guys, kind of spar a little bit and roll around. Um, and I'm not even joking. I got DDT, which is not a legal collegiate wrestling move. Like,
No.
kid just DDT me on the top of my head. I land on my back, asthma attack right away. Like, that was it, asthma attack. My mom's like rushing to get me my inhaler and stuff, and like, it was just, that was my first experience with like any sports outside of like baseball or whatever t-ball I played as a kid. But then in high school I did middle school and high school I did play football and then wrestled for a short stint um, once I was a little bit older and didn't have like the little kid asthma and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Um, I wrestled in high school, so like I completely understand
Okay.
like the whole like let's do this because
Um,
I watched. By then, I knew that obviously this wrestling is completely different from this
right.
wrestling, but I was like, well, it's the same thing. Like I might as well
Yeah.
go. I'm gonna learn something. Like
Yep.
they both start with a collar and elbow tie up. Like one's a
Exactly.
little bit more serious than the other one, but they both lock up. Like it can't be too much different.
Dude.
So I get it.
Yeah. As a kid, I was obviously sadly mistaken whenever, I realized this is not what I thought it was at all. And then as I got older, I was like, now that I know it's not, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I still like the competition. Now I
Yeah.
want to take this serious and try this. So,
Did you ever take like your football or collegiate wrestling to like a further level? Or
no, so I got pulled from both actually due to a back injury. So I was
okay,
in a car wreck when I was a kid, and it caused some issues with my spine. And once I healed from that, the doctor basically was like, yeah, no contact sports, this and that. But then I healed and then I got cleared for it. And then football and wrestling kind of re injured my back. Um, so then I basically had to call it quits from there. And that was just my sophomore year of high school.
okay.
So then that junior and senior year, I wasn't able to do any contact sports. And really, it wasn't, I went forever thinking that, okay, I can't do anything physical, like that. Um, and then one day I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do pro wrestling. I don't care. Like,
How does that affect you mentally? Because I know like I tore my rotator cuff, for instance,
yeah,
and was told, hey, you'd never I was told I'd never wrestle again. Did I wrestled the next 2 years? Shouldn't have. That was a bad decision. But like how does that affect you mentally?
honestly, like sometimes it worries me, like there are specific things in pro wrestling that I will not do, just for the sake of like the risk versus reward type deal, because I look
Makes
at this
sense.
business, I want to do this as long as I can. Am I scared that my back's going to get re-injured? Honestly, no. Like I feel the best I've ever felt. Um, and also I feel like the break that I had from doing really physical activities, like, you know, allowed my body to probably heal to the amount that it needed to. Um, I've broken both my ankles, so it's like it's one of those things that, do I let that kind of worry me? I just know the mobility in my ankles both suck, so like I try to make sure everything's braced properly there, far as my back, I just know, cool. If I take my bumps how I'm supposed to, like, I'll be fine. Do I get the aches and pains? Absolutely. But is it abnormal aches and pains that pro wrestlers normally don't have? No, it's the same amount as usual.
Okay.
So not too much.
Was there ever any plan B, or did you know, like right out of high school, that you wanted to wrestle?
Man, there was actually pro wrestling was never my plan A.
Okay.
Yeah, man, right out of high school, I actually started working for Amazon, and like they had just launched a fulfillment center in my home area, and I was like, cool. I was either going to go to Rankin and become an automotive technician because I was real big into cars. Um, so I was like, I'm going to go work in Amazon for a year, save up, then I'm going to go to college. But then that year through Amazon, I realized I'm making too good of money to quit and go to college. Um, and I ended up being with Amazon for 7.5 years. Now, obviously, I started my pro wrestling, in that time. Um, but for a while, like I never even thought about pro wrestling, like as ever being an option. All the way up until shoot, uh, early 2020, because I remember like I reached out to a couple schools and then COVID hit, and then everything was shut down for a year. you know. But like that early 2020 was when I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot, and see if I can do something with this. And initially, it was I'm gonna make it a hobby, and I'll just wrestle on the weekends. Where now my mindset's completely different,
Yeah.
after being a couple years in. Um, so it's just like kind of learning that and realizing that now pro wrestling is my plan A. And, the plan B is pro wrestling still because, I'm putting all my focus into this. But initially, it was never even my plan A.
What would you say like really changed your mind and made you decide to go all in?
EC3, um, he he really the second I did a seminar with him, it was January 2023. No, oh God, yeah, January 2023. That is right. I did a seminar with him. It was actually a NWA slash CYN, which is Control Your Narrative, tryout down in Chuckey, Tennessee at Ricky Morton's school. And I worked a match. It was a 5-minute match, had a 60-second promo before. And the feedback I got after the match, was that I was green, but he said, there's something here, not sure exactly what it is. You're doing something right. Keep doing this. And that was all I heard from him. But in my head, I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep trying and I'm going to try a little harder and see if I can make this something because, and it could have been and I would have that. I'm sure now I could ask him, hey, were you just BSing me at that point? Was that the typical, hey, man, I don't know what you got, but you got something, keep working? Or if he actually truly, felt that there was something there. But I was so green, man. I was only like a year and some change in, and I was like still in the process of transforming my body. And but I would say that was the moment. That moment, January 2023, is when I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna keep doing this, and I'm gonna be the best that I can be, and take this as far as I can.
Do you think that maybe like the fact that it was good like feedback and there was definitely no bad feedback. Do you think that played
Yeah,
a role into it?
yeah, absolutely. Because like I was green, so like I wasn't. He wasn't like, hey, take your boots off and burn them. He's just like, hey, you're green.
Yeah.
You're still learning and keep learning. There's no. Basically, there was. If I would have went out there and dropped some dude on his head, then yeah, he would have been like, all right, like you need to fix something.
Like,
But
what are you doing? Kind of
yeah,
thing.
but it was everything I did was proper. It was understood what my level was, and I worked at that level.
Okay.
Um, so I think definitely they're not necessarily being bad feedback, and then they're being like a little bit of a motivation to say, hey, keep doing what you're doing, keep working. Definitely, you know, inspired that mentality of, oh, I might be able to do this, you know.
You mentioned work like at that time specifically working at your level, like you knowing your what you've been trained at, what you can do.
Mhm.
Do you think that is something that is important, like for people to understand to like not try to go out to the ring and do too much?
Absolutely. I was originally trained by Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. and Bob taught me all my basics. He taught me about my body slams, my headlock, my collar and elbow tie up, headlock take. I mean, everything basics, right? And the thing that I realized over time is, and this is something Bob says too, is if you can lock up, do a headlock, run the ropes, hip toss, body slam, you can work anywhere. You can work anyone, anywhere. And it's just those basic moves. If you do them right, you make them look snappy, you make them look fluent, and just put some umph behind them. Like you can do that with anyone. You can work anywhere. And I understood like to never work outside of my level, never work above what I can do. And there was many times guys would be like, "Hey, you want to take a brain buster?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've never like no, like I'm not doing that." Well, it's just a vertical suplex, and cool. I've never been taught how to safely protect myself. And that was the other thing. Like real early on, if I'd never taken that bump at training, I would not take it on a show. Was a
Okay.
big thing. If I never taken a power bomb bump at training, if I was never taught how to do again safely protect myself, I'm not gonna risk it on a show that I'm getting paid X amount for. You know,
Yeah.
um, I think that is definitely a thing. Some people get real eager. They get the green light, they go through, a school's 12-week program, and they get told, all right, you can go out there and wrestle. And then they go out there and they just start doing XYZ. Um, and it's like, okay, I can tell you haven't, actually done that before because your body control is not where it's supposed to be for that spot.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where it's like, I still to this day, I will never do anything that I have not done in a scenario of making sure I can do it. So and that's not even just for me. I will never, this is the thing, I will never perform a move that I am not willing to take,
Okay.
is another thing. That is
I
that
like
is
that.
something I never expect someone to, say, hey, do this move to me. I can protect myself if I've never performed it for one, and two, if I've never taken the bump myself. You know, because taking the bump out of a move and giving the person a bump go hand in hand because you have to realize you're also protecting them if they don't know how to protect themselves. So if someone goes, yeah, man, give me a pile driver, I know how to protect myself, but then they don't, and you don't do what you're supposed to do to protect them, and you break their
They
neck,
they get hurt.
So that's where it's I don't give moves that I'm not willing to take. I don't give moves that I've never given before, and those go hand in hand.
Okay. How did you go about finding the Ace Wrestling Academy, and what were like some of your biggest takeaways from your time there?
Oh man. So right before COVID hit, uh, I was actually I was probably the worst version of myself. I was 286 pounds. I was working, at Amazon, working, sleeping, working, sleeping. That was it. wasn't working on cars, wasn't doing anything with cars, none of that, had no hobbies. Um, and my girlfriend at the time was like, why don't you look into professional wrestling? You've always been a fan. Like, just give it a try. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll look into it. Well, then COVID hit, everything shut down. I had applied to two schools, one being the Harley Race Wrestling Academy, which is now tied to the NWA territory, World League Wrestling, and then the Ace Wrestling Academy, which is Bob Orton's school. And COVID hit, boom, everything shuts down. A year later, I get a phone call from the Ace Wrestling Academy. Hey, we're doing an open tryout. We're opening the school back up. We'd like to, if you're interested, come on in. A year later, they could have trashed my number, forgot about me, whatever. But they were like, hey, this kid, he applied, a year ago. Let's just see if he's still, wanting to do it. At that point, I was in even worse shape, after COVID. And, but still was like, you know what? I got to do something to get myself moving and active and getting in better shape. And that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to go do this. So I went there, did that. And that's when I really learned the old school mentality of professional wrestling, which is something that I think is lacking a lot in some aspects in the business. That would be my biggest takeaway is how Bob trained all of us. Even like I said, just small things like those 5 moves, learning how to do those. You can work anywhere, you can work anyone, and you can have a 5-minute TV match. You can have an 8 to 10 minute house show match. You can do whatever, um, just based off those 5 moves. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but like it really is a lot, because I mean, if you body slam a guy 3 or 4 times, he's going to stop kick. He's not going to kick out at some point, you
Yeah.
know, and maybe the one body slam you do is more angled towards a power slam, or something like that. And I would say that was the biggest takeaway was that old school mentality, um, which really helped me out a lot early on in my career, and then also where I'm at now currently, it can differentiate me from other, talent in the locker room.
You mentioned like there needing to be maybe a little bit more of that old school mentality.
Yeah,
Mhm. What parts would you say, like, do you think that the wrestling
I
community could use the most?
man, so this is where like the pro wrestling business is very saturated right now when it comes to pro wrestlers. And I think I think that's because it's so easy for someone to pay 3 grand to go to a 12-week program and get told you're a professional wrestler. You can go work shows. Um, you know, one of the things with the training we did with Bob was it was very much like, when Bob was trained, they would take your money and beat the crap out of you and hope that you don't come back, right? So that way they got your money. And that was a way for them to kind of weed out the people who are tough enough, basically is what they looked at it. Where
Yeah.
like nowadays, even Bob, being an old school guy, like he realizes that that's not necessarily the correct way or the proper way to kind of let the business grow. But one thing that Bob says that I do very much agree with is that pro wrestling is for everyone. It is for everyone. But being a pro wrestler is not for everyone. And I think that is a aspect that the pro wrestling community really could benefit from of like everyone has a spot in pro wrestling and it just might not be being a pro wrestler. So I would say that. I would say maybe the filtering of in-ring talent, which would also help with the oversaturation of workers in the business.
Okay. Um, was that seminar with EC3 your first exposure to him?
Yeah, yeah, that was my very first moment. meeting EC3. Obviously, I knew him from his time with Impact, even his time with, WWE doing NXT. Um, and then whenever he ended up joining the NWA, I was familiar with his work there as well. But in person conversation, connection, that was the first time. And I give all my credit and respect to the guy I worked that day. The guy I worked was Unchained Brandon Day, and he is a guy out of Ohio who is trained under Taz when Taz had his dojo, and he is a 20-plus year vet in our business, and he made me look like $1 million that day. Like I said, I was so green, and Brandon realized where I was at. He realized he was here, and I'm here, so he did not have to really lower himself to work at my level, but bring me up to his level.
That
And
makes
he
sense.
did that so well without making me have to do anything I did not know. It was it was the way he told the story of our match that brought me up to his level. And I think if I would have worked anyone else, I probably EC3 would have never remembered who I was because I didn't see EC3 for 11 months after that. And then I went to Cleveland and did a preface, is what his seminars are called now with Exodus Pro Wrestling. And he remembered who I was, but I had also at that time dropped a little over 40 pounds and put on some muscle, and he could tell, oh, this kid's actually like busting his ass. He wants to do this, and his in ring work has improved tremendously, So um, that was my first time meeting him, was January 2023, and I didn't meet him again until December 2023. And then I did another seminar in January of 2024, and then I started training with him in May of 2024. And if I would never have had that well of a match I had at the Ricky Morton CYN NWA tryout uh, with Brandon Day, I don't think I would have ever have had the opportunities I have now.
Was it in May whenever you kind of like started doing like the control your narrative, like co-op stuff?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that was I would really say so in wrestling, when you're working a match, there's a time in the match where you hit what we call a gear change. And it's basically when you up your intensity and you
Yeah.
just start, the match is going into that next gear. May was that for my career. That was my gear change. Um, because I was my basics were down pat. I could work a solid old school wrestling match. Um, I didn't need to do any crazy moves. My finish was, spine buster. It was a Arn Anderson style spine buster.
I
Like
like it.
everyone uses that as a filler, just like people do with the DDT or super kick or whatever. But that was my finish. Anybody can take that,
Yeah.
and I never did anything that was like super crazy. But going going to the co-op in May, it was my opportunity to become marketable. That's what my goal was, is to go learn from EC3 and the guys that he has around him on how can I become marketable in this business to where a company like the NWA will look at me and go, this kid can make us some money. We need to sign him. Or a company like TNA, this kid can make us some money. I want to sign him. And the reason I say those two companies is because obviously the dream is always WWE, right? Or, even now AEW. But I'm still very realistic in my approach to this business, to where it's like, if that opportunity ever comes, awesome. Would be ecstatic to work for either of those companies. But I look at TNA, NWA, hell, even, New Japan, or even larger independents as more of a short term milestone that's a more realistic, it's achievable for me to do. And that's what doing the co-op was how do I become marketable to companies like that that I know can bring me in at the level that I'm at.
Okay. Was that like also probably when you started working with Exodus Pro Wrestling?
Yeah, man. I'd done a couple prefaces. Like I said, the January and then December 2023. Um, and then I did one in January 2024. And I had my exposure to Exodus there, and I knew like it's the best thing is like, I'm very close with a lot of the guys there, and they don't look at like Exodus as a uh, like a crazy popular high level indie, like a Wrestling Revolver or a GCW or anything like that. So when they get guys that are like, whenever I come in and I'm like, yeah, man, this is that next level for me, they're just like, what? Like, that's wild. Like, we just started this place, a year ago. And, or at the time, not even a year ago. And, Exodus was for me, I was like, if I can get into Exodus, I can get into NWA. That's how I looked at it. And, I started training with three in May, and then it was June that they were like, "All right, we're gonna have you do your character introduction promo," um, and then wrestled July, wrestled August. We took September, October off, and then I wrestled, for them in November, and then I'm wrestling for them in January. So I'm only a handful of matches in with Exodus, but I've been on every show consistently, since June. And it was really we came in, we realized we kind of honed in on who I am in this business. Um, because I was for a while I was going by Top Gun Brandon Barretta, and I was doing the bullet holes and the typical what you would think of when you hear gun. Everyone thought Top Gun was going to be the mustache and aviators and bomber jacket, but that was never my intent with that moniker. Um, it was always kind of just it was a way for me to coming out of the Ace Wrestling Academy at the time. Um, I was the second graduate out of Bob Orton's school, and I was like, but I'm the top graduate. I'm the graduate that's going to do something with this actually. And it was kind of just a way for me to kind of add that little bit of um, I've been a face everywhere pretty much, and as Top Gun Brandon Beretta, but it was still a way for me to toe that line of cockiness and arrogance, where it's
Okay.
like I'm the top,
Give you some edge.
graduate. Yeah, just that little bit, and then it was really figuring out, okay, is that who I am? Is Top Gun Brandon Beretta what's going to be marketable? Um, and it was for the level that I was at, but the level I want to be at, we gotta figure things out and hone things in, and that's where strictly business came from. So
Okay. When like what really made you decide to go from your Top Gun character to that strictly business character? Like what shifted to make that
man,
change?
so this is the insides on it. So whenever I was, I'm from St. Louis, and Cleveland's an 8-hour drive, right? I'm training in Cleveland Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'm driving up to Cleveland every Monday morning, training Monday night, and then one of the guys up there, Noah, he helps run. He's one of the owners of Exodus. He gives me an air mattress in the basement. It's like, you can stay here while you're in town. So I would sleep on an air mattress, you know, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night after training, 8 hours back home. So I could be back in St. Louis Thursday morning. Now that changed when I started doing OVW more consistently, but it was, we would always go after training on Monday and Tuesdays, and we would go to Applebee's right across in the little business area across from Noah's house. And we're sitting there, and one of the other guys that's up there for training, he's just like, man, we really got to figure you out. Noah's like, we really got to figure out what, because Top Gun Brandon Barretta is just not, we don't know if that's it. We don't know if there's a spot on Exodus for Top Gun Brandon Barretta. And the first thing they ask me is they go, what's your favorite movie? And I go, I don't got time to watch movies. What's your favorite TV show? And I go, dude, I don't watch TV. Video games? I sold my Xbox, 4 months ago because I don't play it. And jokingly, Noah goes, so, dude, so you're a pretty boring guy. And I was like, I mean, dude, everything I do is surrounded by professional wrestling. I'm all about this business. Like, this is everything I do is to further myself in this business. And, Noah just kind of goes, well, what if that's it? What if you're just about business? What if you're just strictly business? And, we kind of talked about it. And, he had spitballed some ideas there sitting at Applebee's. And then I thought about it for the night, and I thought about it and I was like, honestly, this is more along the lines of who I am as a person. And it's like, sure, I can have the small things that, gimmick it up a little bit, but really, I don't even need to do that. If anything, I need to take my gimmick and tone it down. And we just kind of played with it for a while. And then at training, we worked on, how do I move in the ring? What's my intent? What's my purpose? I'm not here to run high spots. I'm here to win, And then it's like, well, what does your gear look like? And I show them my gear and they're like, I don't know if what if you just do an all black singlet? And I'm like, yeah, because having my name down the back of my singlet does not help me win a match, you know? And it was just, we kept coming up with these small things that, just fit to this strictly business gimmick. And it's just, it was that moment at Applebee's that's where we figured it out. And we're like, we're going to see how the crowd reacts to this. They're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. And either reaction is a great reaction,
100%.
and, learning how I would say my thing right now, the thing that I want to be known by strictly business, is God, he can work a waist lock takeover like nobody else. So my biggest thing right now is I don't lock up with anyone. If you're in the ring with strictly business, I'm shooting a waist lock right away. And that's just a thing. And as this, as I continue to grow and, become more known, I want that to be the thing. I want that to be, this guy doesn't lock up. And if he gets a waist lock on you, you're about to have a bad
It's
time,
over.
you know? But it was that conversation at Applebee's that was the moment that strictly business literally just came to life. And it was because apparently I'm a boring guy. Like,
I mean, they say the best characters or gimmicks are the ones that are the closest to home. So
yeah,
obviously that one resonated with you, and it seems to be working.
dude, it's in, February will be the 3 short years that I've been in this business. Um, but ever since I started doing strictly business, that is really where I've gotten the most traction at, and the
Okay.
most, like, I've had more people say, "Hey, I want you to come in and do that." Like, I've had people, in the past, even when I was doing Top Gun Brandon Barretta, I was in a tag team, and like I still had people that would want to bring me in for singles work, but like there was no, I didn't have a personality or a gimmick to it. There was nothing about me that made me, oh yeah, that's that Top Gun Brandon Barretta guy. Other than my moves being simple moves that I just add that snap to, that I could work, a simple match and it'd be just as exciting as, a high spot flipping match. Um, but the strictly business is really, that's what got the traction for me.
So, like, do you think that the way you approach a match without doing the high spots, where you focus on the, lack of better words, the basics, do you think
Mm-hmm.
that helps? Because, like, right now, we're probably oversaturated with moves as far as wrestling goes.
Yeah,
Everybody's worried about the craziest thing you can do. Do you think that the ability to captivate a crowd with, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but with that
seriously,
basic
yeah.
foundation, like, do you think that gives you an edge?
I will actually give you an example. So
Okay.
I before this tournament ended up getting canceled, but there was a tournament in Atlanta, Georgia, and the promotion still brought me in for some shows. Um, but there was a tournament called the Savage 16. You had to
Okay.
be under 25 and under, I think at the, yeah, it had to be under 3 years experience or something like that. And it was basically a tournament for young talent to go down, wrestle this round robin style tournament, and get exposure. And what they want is they want you to submit a promo photo, a quick bio, where you're from, who you're trained by, all that stuff, and then a highlight reel. I didn't even have a highlight reel, dude. Like, what am I gonna do? Show a highlight reel of me doing some body slams, a spine buster, a suplex? And that's what I did. I sent them a highlight reel of, dude, I had a back body drop, me giving someone a back body drop in my highlight reel.
Okay.
So I submitted in, and one of my buddies who works in that Atlanta area, his name's Kenway, and he hits me up. He's like, "Dude, did you watch the live stream where they watched everyone's highlight reels?" And I go, "No, I didn't even know that was a thing." He goes, "You have to go watch this. They're over the top for your highlight reel." And one of the things that was brought up about it was the guy. I don't want to quote, so this might not be a direct quote, but the gist of it was everyone sends in all these technical high spot highlight reels. Brandon Barretta sends a highlight reel in doing body slams, spine busters, suplex, and a back body drop. He goes, "I'm marking out for this guy." And that was for me, I was like, that just shows like if a promoter that typically books these super indie, style workers sees a highlight reel of me doing the bare minimum basics and is over the top ecstatic about it, like that shows that it still works. Those moves still work. The basics still work. And that's something that I can only credit to Bob Orton, is learning those basics and learning how to do them well makes you stand out to all the guys that are athletic freaks doing these crazy high spots or
Yeah.
doing pile drivers or doing whatever. And I don't have any ill feeling towards that stuff because I still am impressed as hell that people can do what people do in the ring. And I actually tend to find my best matches are against the guys that do that stuff
Okay.
because the second they start to do that stuff and then I take them down with a waist lock takeover, that crowd hates me
Yeah.
because they want to see the flippy stuff. And I take that away from them with such a simple move. And then I don't give it to them, for an extended period of time. And then when they finally get back and they get to do this or they get to do that, this high spot, this one, and I know how to safely take these moves. The crowd just erupts for those moves even more
Yeah.
because now they're
It
not seeing
builds
it
that
50
pop.
times. Exactly. And that's something I feel like Gabe Sapolsky, I did a seminar of his. He talked about how the pops people are getting are not the same as what they were 10 years ago. Someone sees a shooting star now, they're just
It's okay.
cool,
We've seen it. We
right?
saw it the last match, probably.
Exactly. They're not getting out of their chairs and standing ovation for those moves. Even now, when you see someone do a Canadian destroyer, that used to be a, oh my gosh, holy shit moment. Now it's like, oh, cool, they just did three Canadian destroyers to each other back to back, you
Yeah.
know, and you might get a clap
You might
out
get
of
a,
it.
oh, that's cool, but you're not getting a pop.
Dude, that's it, man. And that's where I really enjoy having that more basic fundamental style that allows those moves to mean something more in the matches that I work. So it's not that I'm against that stuff at all, because I think there's a crowd for that. And I tend to see whenever, if I'm brought in and I'm able to kind of throw some diversity in that style of work, you get you can get more out of it in a sense. Can you go out there and put two guys in there and have a banger of a match and they do, 50 super kicks and this and that? Yeah, man, there's crowds that enjoy that stuff. But the second you put someone in here that takes that away from that crowd's going to come up even more for those same moves. And then you don't got to do them 50 times. So,
Okay. Um, just for time, I'm gonna run through like some of the bigger promotions you've been able to work with.
yeah,
You want to just tell us maybe a little bit about your time there
yeah,
and how it's impacted your career so far. I'm
absolutely.
gonna start with um, another a promotion that has some history behind it with Memphis Wrestling.
Yeah,
Give us a little rundown.
dude. So Memphis was my first time really working true TV. Um, and I would say my time, I was with Memphis for maybe right at a year. Um, and honestly, there's no reason that I'm not still there. It's just kind of dates and stuff like that, colliding with each other. Um, but Memphis was really where I got that experience on how to work TV, working a hard cam and then working floor cameras. My promotion that I work in St. Louis does tapings, but it's just a single hard cam, so you only got to work one side really. Where Memphis, it was you're working the hard cam and then you have floor cameras that you're working to as well.
Okay.
Um, and I would say that was my biggest thing with there was learning how to work TV and being able to go to a promotion like, which I'm sure will be brought up, but like OVW, and already being in a sense able to work TV ready.
Well, speaking of OVW, that was where I was going to go next. What was your time like with OVW?
Yeah, man. So I still work OVW. I would say OVW was like just that next level up to working TV. um,
Okay.
their production value there is um, just a bit more. And that's, not belittling Memphis at all, because Memphis is a great product and they put out phenomenal, phenomenal videos and, a TV product that the people in Memphis can watch and enjoy. OVW, it just kind of has that a little bit more of a history slash, oh, it used to be developmental for WWE, and it's ran by Al Snow and like Doug Basham's there, and they bring in, like, I just was there Saturday for the Nightmare Rumble, and JBL's there, Mick Foley's there, and a lot of the people they bring in are also people that um, are good TV workers, so it's uh it's been a blast working with OVW thus far. Um, and kind of being brought in initially, like not being an EC3 or Exodus, guy. I was kind of just in there on my own. But now they even look at me as, okay, this is one of EC3's guys. He's got Barretta and he's got Leo Fox and, other guys that he brings in. It really, it's a great experience, to work with OVW.
Have you got to have any interactions with like an Al Snow or a Doug Basham at
Oh,
all?
yeah, yeah. Like, behind, the scenes or, backstage or whatever, um, they are just a wealth of knowledge. They both, I mean, Doug Basham still coaches. They bring him in as a guest coach down at the PC in Florida. And,
Okay,
and that alone just shows that his brain for wrestling is just phenomenal. Um,
definitely.
so having him and Al, at OVW and be able to just talk to them about kind of the things we have going on and how to keep improving is just awesome.
Um, what about AEW?
AEW, dude, that is, they've brought me in for extra work. I would say a handful of times, um, and it's always a great experience. It's always a great payday. um, working for a company of that size, and they they've given me opportunities to, even though I might just be doing security work, but like being able to go out there, like I was a part of the segment uh, where Bobby Lashley debuted. So like I'm in the ring doing stuff with Shelton Benjamin. I'm in the ring doing stuff with Bobby Lashley. I've been in the ring with MJF and Daniel Garcia. Like just being around guys like that, like my biggest takeaway from it is I always size myself compared to these guys. And
Okay.
because I'm like, all right, if they look this way on TV, then I know I'll look this way, and that's my biggest thing with AEW is I always try to, like, these guys are huge, right? Like Bobby Lashley is massive. Um, but I see him in person, I'm like, okay, with my boots on, I won't look super small compared to him. Like,
Yeah.
still will tower over me, but I know I wouldn't look terrible, being on a TV of that scale. And it's been a blast doing that. Like every single time, being in segments, where the producer for the segments, Christopher Daniels or Sanjay Dutt or Pat Buck, like everyone treats you so well. They don't treat you as, oh, you're just extra. You're just extra talent. They treat you like you're supposed to be there. And the same thing with all the wrestlers. They treat you as if, in that day, in that moment, those 8 hours that you are on site with them, you're you're an AEW contracted, personnel.
Talent. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's how you're treated there. And that, I think that's super cool.
definitely. Last promotion to just be spitballing, I guess. I'll go with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
NWA.
Yeah, man. NWA is, I work their territory in Cleveland. I'll be working their territory in St. Louis. And that is my current goal. That is what, like, I feel like that's where my trajectory is, like, on path to, is I want to be with the NWA. I wouldn't have went to Cleveland to train under EC3 if I didn't think that it would get me closer to the NWA. Like I would have went there either way, but it would have been maybe for the same reason of just becoming more marketable, um, or just trying to get to that next level. But in the same time, I was like, this could potentially open that door because if I get on Exodus, that could potentially be NWA stuff. And I've worked dark matches for the NWA, and it's one of those things that they are just as put together as a company like AEW, and I would even say in some aspects more put together,
Okay.
on how it's ran, um, just based off of some of the experiences I've had with, like, okay, who are the people that are here to be extras? Who are, making sure that they're ran down, making sure that they're supposed to be there, um, but then also ensuring that everyone's involved. That if you were told to be there, you're there to do something. Where sometimes you might go do extra work for WWE, you might go do extra work for AEW, and there's 10, 15 guys, and only three people get something. So then it's like, okay, cool, I'm still getting paid, but God, I'd love to do something.
Yeah,
We're like the NWA, it's typically, if you're there, they told you to be there, you're doing something. And I think that's a really cool experience to have.
definitely. Just wrapping it up. I got two more questions.
Yeah,
One being, as we are very young into 2025, what would you say as far as like short-term goals for this year are? What would those be?
man. So I just kind of reevaluated my business plan for 2025. I had attended a meeting, I would say, where there's a book called The 10X Mindset. And in this book, it talks about the 80-20 ratio. And basically, what it says is, the things that you put 80% of your time into give you 20% of your results. And the things that you are giving 20% of your time to give you 80% of your results. So the 10X mindset of that is, why don't you put 80% of your time into the things that you've been putting 20% of your time into? So that way, those 20% of the time options that were giving you 80% of your results are now going to give you even more. So, for example, in wrestling terms, I've gotten a lot of traction with Strictly Business, going through Exodus Pro, doing things with the NWA, where working other smaller promotions, which are still great to work. They are great reps. But if I provide more time to Exodus, to NWA, I'm going to get even more results out of that, more exposure, so on and so forth. So I would say for me in 2025 is to just really focus on that 80-20 mindset. And if you look the book up, 10X Mindset, it's a great read. Would even benefit probably in the podcast scene. But to really just look at where I'm getting the most exposure and most benefits from, and to really just like hammer down on those. And that would be a short term goal, because then I feel like if I do that the front half of the year, the back half of the year will just pay off from that.
Okay. I like that answer. Um, Lastly, I'll end on a fun one. I always end the podcast on a Mount Rushmore. If
Okay.
you had to pick your top four guys, who would they
Mm.
be and roughly why?
I was gonna just speed them off because I thought I had them, but then I start thinking, um, man, I think I don't know if I can give you an order. So this will just be four guys, but not in any particular order.
Okay,
Okay. But I'm gonna go with Randy Orton.
gotcha.
And these are guys that I'm very fond of. Malenko.
Like it.
Man, oh man. I'm gonna go Regal. Kind of similar styles, but also different. And then I would say just a typical one, but that is also just because he has been, I mean, the best character I think professional wrestling's ever provided would be The Undertaker.
Okay, I like it. Brandon, I want to say thank you once again. I really enjoyed having you on here. It's a great podcast.
Thank you.
I'll leave the door open. If you ever want to come back on, shoot
Hey,
the shit. Let's
dude.
do it.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. I appreciate it, dude. Anytime you're like, hey, you just want to come on chat, you just let me know, because things are always changing, things are always moving. It's always good to do little follow-ups and updates. And I think what you have right now with your podcast, I know you said you're only 6 months in, but it's a very well put together. Like, you've clearly done research, and that's a big part on you that some people don't do. So um, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and put Strictly Business Brandon Barretta out there to people who may not know me yet.
Sounds like we're gonna have to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
At least by the
so
summer.
definitely. So I'll leave it at see you next time.